Part 8. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 71. The farce ended with the Ling brothers and sisters kneeling down to admit their mistakes, but they were reluctant to admit their mistakes. The beautiful Ling Shui's eyes turned red, and she looked like a young wife who was bullied by her evil mother-in-law but dared not resist. She easily captured the sympathy of most men present. After all, many men are born with a sense of superiority and like to protect the weak. Even the daughter of the Ling family who is in charge of military power and has the support of concubine Duan is not weak at all. However, compared with the powerful Chu Qinghuang, Ling Shui can barely be considered weak. Everyone dared not say anything, but they believed in their hearts that even if Chu Qinghuang finally got the upper hand, it was the princess who took advantage of her power to bully others and make trouble from beginning to end. By the way, who posted a message to the princess today? She whips people at will, and a woman who likes to confiscate property when she is unhappy, shouldn't she stay in the princess's mansion to wield swords and guns? Why did you come to this poetic place to disturb their interest and ruin their good mood? Everyone was muttering in their hearts, but no one dared to speak nonsense. Even Chu Yuling had to stay still for a while. It's getting late, let's start the event now. A woman in a water green dress slowly came over with 4 maids and saluted Chu Qinghuang, "My concubine Lu, meet Her Royal Highness the Princess. She is the Princess of an county who is responsible for hosting the Liu's Hang poetry meeting today. She is about 27 or 28 years old and is also a member of the royal family. Her husband, Prince An, is the cousin of several princes of the present, but he did not participate in the battle for the throne of any prince. He usually behaves in a low-key and unpretentious style. He does not like to show off among the royal dignitaries, so his presence is extremely low." The ladies and the young men walk separately, and several young men who got along well with each other walked together. There were also a few friends who often interacted with each other in the circle of ladies who gathered together, and the others were people who had their own minds. The weather is nice today. When Jean walked beside Chu Qinghuang, smiling gently, "Your Highness, are you interested in sitting together?" Chu Qinghuang silently looked at the men and women who had gathered by the stream, nodded slowly, walked over with Wen Zhan, and chose a place with few people to sit down. "Before the Kushui Liu's Hang begins, we can write a poem to warm up." A woman in pink clothes laughed loudly. "What do you think?" "That's a good idea." A girl in a goose yellow dress nodded in agreement. "Why not use Kushui Liu's Hang as the theme? Today, the 6th princess is the most respected, so why not start with the 6th princess?" Chu Yuling glanced at the girl who was speaking, and reprimanded her in a fake tone, "Just for this sentence, you should be beaten." "Who is the most respected?" The woman who was speaking was stunned, and then she seemed to react and pretended to hit herself. "Look at my memory. The 7th princess has just been conferred the title of the princess, so the princess should be the most respected." As she said that, she turned her head to look at Chu Qinghuang, and said in a humble tone, "I wonder if Her Royal Highness the Princess is interested." However, the superficial humility could not hide the contempt in her heart. This flower-crazy idiot only knew how to wield swords and guns all day long, relying on her brute force to whip others at will, and forced into the mansion when she met a good-looking man. Can she write poems? It's a joke. It's better to see how she makes a fool of herself today. 7th sister is not good at this, don't embarrass her." Chu Yuling smiled gently. The girl was surprised when she heard it. "Your Highness the Princess is not good at writing poems." Chu Qinghuang looked at them coldly, singing in unison. Her voice was so light that no emotion could be heard. "What's your name?" The woman was startled and suddenly quieted down. "I'm asking you a question." Chu Qinghuang's voice was cold. "What's your name?" No matter whether the other people beside the stream were close or far away, they all noticed that the atmosphere was wrong at this moment, and their eyes fell on them at the same time, with some obvious doubts and uneasiness in their eyes. "What's wrong?" The woman in the goose yellow dress looked pale, and she might have finally realized that the princess in front of her had a fickle temper, and said uneasily, Your Highness Wen Shang. Wen Shang? Chu Qinghuang looked at her silently. The girl had a small oval face, fair and tender skin, and a well-proportioned figure. She was wearing a satin skirt that was commonly worn by women from aristocratic families. The material was high quality, but not top-notch and expensive. The clothes reveal the person. This girl's family background must not be bad, but among the many legitimate daughters of princesses, or powerful ministers, she seemed a little ordinary. Her last name was Wen? Chu Qinghuang turned to look at Wen Zhan. Yours. Wen Zhan nodded slowly. To be precise, she is Wen Li's biological sister. As for him, she was not born from the same mother. Chu Qinghuang understood, and her eyes fell back on Wen Chang's face. Do you know that your father's position as Shangshu was recommended by me to the emperor? Wen Chang bit her lip. Your servant, your servant. If you make me unhappy today, I can go to the emperor at any time to impeach Lord Wen for not educating his daughter properly. Chu Qinghuang flicked her sleeves. When your father is dismissed, will he beat you to pieces when he returns? Wen Chang's face turned pale, and she knelt down with a plop. Your servant knows the crime. Princess, calm down, I know I was wrong. Everyone was strangely silent, and then turned their heads to look at the flowing stream in front of them. I'm afraid today's Liu's Hang poetry meeting will not be held. With Chu Qinghuang here, this place will only become a place for her to bully others and show off her power. How can they play? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 72. Wen Zhan. Chu Qinghuang said coldly, How do you think this palace should punish your sister? Wen Shang looked at Wen Zhan with a pale face. Wen Zhan was silent for a moment, and then Wen Ruan said, Your Highness, can you please spare her this time for my sake? Wen Shang looked nervous. If I spare her, will she remember the lesson? Report to your Highness the Princess, Wen Shang said with a trembling voice. I must remember that I will never dare to do it again next time. I beg your Highness to forgive me this time. Wen Zhan smiled and begged again. Your Highness has the heart of a bodhisattva, so don't worry about it like a little girl. Bodhisattva-hearted. The expressions of everyone present were subtle. Her Royal Highness the eldest princess has such a bodhisattva heart, and the Wen family's concubine is really good at telling lies with his eyes open. Chu Qinghuang looked at Wen Zhan silently for a while, and then nodded lightly. In this case, I will spare her once. If she does it again next time, I will let Lord Wen take the position of minister to someone else. Wen Zhan smiled slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. Wen Shang breathed a sigh of relief as if he had escaped from death, and quickly thanked her. Thank you, Your Highness, Princess, for your kindness. I will never dare to do it again in the future. She decided to take a detour when she saw the eldest princess in the future. If she couldn't get around, she would kneel down obediently and never apologize again. Her Highness the eldest princess's aura was too scary. Chu Qinghuang said nothing. Wen Shang carefully looked at her face, slowly stood up and sat aside. Seeing that Chu Qinghuang had no reaction, her tense nerves completely relaxed. Everyone was silent, and no one spoke easily for a while. The atmosphere here is too solemn, and it is completely gone from the relaxation and leisure of the poetry gatherings held in previous years. Although in previous years there were invisible tit-for-tat confrontations between noble ladies from aristocratic families, trying to compete with each other in terms of poetry talent, no one understood it. Qinghuang has such a strong temper and powerful pressure. The poetry party has not yet begun, but the successive conflicts have destroyed all the relaxed atmosphere. After being silent for a long time, Chu Yuling spoke up to ease the atmosphere. With me and Kame here, you may not have a good time. Let's do this. Kame and I will go for a walk in the mountains. You all have a good time. As he said that, he turned to look at Chu Qinghuang, seventh sister. Chu Qinghuang glanced at her with an indifferent expression, showing no emotion, but under Chu Yuling's expectant eyes, she nodded casually, yes. Wen Zhan stood up and said, Your Highness. You stay here to play with them, Chu Qinghuang said. If you can come out on top, I will reward you when you go back. Wen Zhan bowed his head humbly, Thank you, Your Highness. Chu Qinghuang turned around and walked towards the mountains. Chu Yuling walked side by side with Chu Qinghuang for a while, turned to look at Fukang who was following her like a shadow, and said with a faint smile, I have something private that I want to talk to Kame alone. The corner of Chu Qinghuang's mouth flashed with a mocking arc, and his attitude was very cooperative, Fukang, you stay here and wait for me. Fukang wanted to say something, but he swallowed it back, lowered his head and said yes. Chu Yuling smiled and walked towards the mountains with Chu Qinghuang. There is a pavilion in front. We can sit there and talk. Chu Yuling's voice was warm and gentle, as if she was talking to a good sister, as if what happened in the past few days had dissipated with the wind. As if, without leaving any trace of resentment, Kame likes Wen Zhan now. Chu Qinghuang responded lightly, not knowing whether he liked it or not. Young Master Wen looks good. He has a gentle and elegant appearance, is outstandingly handsome, and has a bookish air about him. He is indeed the type that seventh sister likes. Chu Yuling sighed, but a bastard is a bastard after all. How can a legitimate son be born innocent, exquisite bearing and pride? Chu Qinghuang said nothing. The concubine has a humble status. Apart from using sex to serve people and clinging to the powerful, he has no sincerity at all. Chu Yuling spoke earnestly, seventh sister is smart and should be able to distinguish pearls from fisheyes. Chu Qinghuang asked calmly, who is the pearl and who is the fisheye? Of course the Prime Minister's legitimate son is a pearl. Chu Yuling smiled, how can the Wen family's legitimate son be compared to Jinzi? Chu Qinghuang was about to speak when a sarcastic voice suddenly sounded in front of him, isn't this the eldest princess's consort? Why are you staying here alone? After being abandoned by the eldest princess, you are so sad that you have no face to see anyone. If you were really shameless, Mr. Feng wouldn't be here today. Another man said with a sneer, you don't want to save your relationship with the eldest princess, do you? I advise Mr. Feng not to have any illusions, no, seeing that Her Royal Highness has a new love. If I were Mr. Feng, I would definitely not come out today and make a fool of myself. After all, so many people saw me kneeling 3 times and kowtowing on the long street that day. After just a few days, I still have a deep impression. Yes, you have lost all face to the Prime Minister, but you actually dare to come out to see people today. An angry look appeared on Chu Yuling's face. She walked over quickly and saw a few people standing in the pavilion. What are you talking about? The few young men in the pavilion were all noble sons of the royal family. When they saw the 6th princess, there was no panic on their faces. They just smiled and saluted, see the 6th princess. The anger on Chu Yuling's face was still there, and she coldly scolded, the dignified son of the Prime Minister, how can I allow you to add insult to injury? Get out of here. 6th princess, calm down, a man in a sky blue satin robe said in a fake and sincere way, we are also trying to enlighten Mr. Feng and tell him not to hang himself on a tree. There are so many women in this world, why do you always want the one that doesn't belong to you? Chu Qinghuang stood calmly outside the pavilion, and when she looked up, she met Feng Jinzi's dark and forbearing eyes. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 73. It acted quite like that. Chu Qinghuang thought in his heart that the man the eldest princess loved so much once fell into disgrace, which immediately caused the royal nobles to fall into trouble. However, he did not argue a word and silently endured all the ridicule and trampling, just to arouse the heartache of the eldest princess. Restore the relationship between the two. What an infatuated man, what superb acting skills. It's rare that Chu Yuling cooperates with him willingly and thoughtfully, and then finds a few children from good family backgrounds to perform with him. If it were Chu Qinghuang in the past, he would probably have been deceived by this drama. Your Highness, Princess. A man in the pavilion noticed Chu Qinghuang, his face changed slightly, and he immediately saluted respectfully, "See you, Your Highness." Others saluted one after another, "I greet Your Royal Highness the eldest princess." Chu Yuling's face was full of anger, "Why don't you get out of here?" Several men quickly turned around and left the pavilion. However, they did not go down the mountain. Instead, they headed toward the dense forest on the mountain in twos and threes. It was not known whether they were scared to see Chu Qinghuang and lost their way, or for some other purpose. The pavilion quickly became quiet. Chu Yuling was silent for a moment and smiled sadly, "I made Kame laugh. I didn't expect these people to be like this." "So what?" Chu Qinghuang understood what she meant, but did not continue. Feng Jinzi said nothing. He was still holding a book in his hand. It seemed that he was just reading here alone for some quiet time, and did not want to join in the fun by the creek. Unexpectedly, even though he was hiding here, he couldn't hide in peace. Instead, he was attacked by several people. If Chu Yuling and Chu Qinghuang hadn't appeared in time, I don't know what kind of unpleasant words those people would have said. Chu Qinghuang turned his eyes slightly and looked around silently. After a moment, he walked into the pavilion and said calmly, "There are many insects and snakes in the dense forest on the mountain. I'm afraid it's not safe to stay here." Chu Yuling paused for a moment, looked in the direction where those people were leaving, and said coldly, "It would be better if they were taught a lesson. All of them only know how to support others and add insult to injury. I don't know how my family taught me such a thing." Praising someone high and putting someone down, Chu Qinghuang mumbled, "The dignified legitimate son of the Prime Minister's mansion should not be reduced to dust yet." Chu Yuling smiled bitterly, "In the imperial capital, there are indispensable young men from aristocratic families who like to laugh at jokes. Many people have witnessed the injustice Jinzi suffered that day. Kame should know that the more noble and proud a person is, the more likely he is to be humiliated. A lot of people who laugh at it." Chu Qinghuang's lips twitched slightly, "Really?" Feng Jinzi was sitting in the corner of the pavilion, her brows slightly furrowed, and she looked a little more tolerant and restrained. She was not as aloof as before, and she looked really distressed. Chu Qinghuang looked at the clumsy drama in front of him with cold eyes, and a rustling sound suddenly penetrated his eardrums, like the sound of some kind of crawling creature. With a slight frown between her brows, she looked around calmly. The grass was moving slightly, and the sound was getting closer and closer. Seventh sister Chu Yuling looked at Chu Qinghuang, "Why don't you speak?" Chu Qinghuang raised his eyes and looked at her, with a trace of pity flashing in his eyes. "When you went out today, did you put any insect repellent on your body?" Chu Yuling's heart skipped a beat, then she smiled calmly, "Scent? I always wear a sachet every time I go out, especially in the dense forest at the foot of the mountain. This is a habit. Does seventh sister not like the smell?" "It's not that I don't like it," Chu Qinghuang said lightly, "Young Master Feng also likes this kind of sachet." Feng Jinzi tightened her grip on the book and said in a calm tone, "There are many insects and snakes in the mountains, so there is no harm in being careful." "Really?" Chu Qinghuang raised her lips indifferently, "I'm afraid the sachet will expire today, so be careful." After saying this, she turned around and walked out of the pavilion, walking calmly down the mountain path. Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi looked at each other, feeling an ominous premonition in their hearts at the same time, and then looked towards the grass outside the pavilion. The rustling sound got closer and closer, and became more and more obvious. Chu Yuling's face turned pale a little. Snake. Colorful snake. 1, 2, 3, countless snakes swooped out from all directions, hissing and spitting out snakes, which made people's blood freeze and chills run up their backs from the soles of their feet. What's even more frightening is that all the snakes have the same goal, and they all move toward the pavilion to surround him. Chu Yuling was so frightened that her face turned pale. She could no longer maintain her gentle and calm appearance, and suddenly screamed, "Ah!" He turned around and ran out of the pavilion without any image, and ran down the mountain. Ah! Help! Help! Miserable screams escaped her throat one after another. The sixth princess, whose image had collapsed, no longer had any dignity and elegance, only fear and loss of composure remained. Someone is coming. Someone is coming quickly. Snake. Snake. Ah dash. Susu. Susu. Feng Jinzi's blood seemed to freeze all over his body, and he sat in the pavilion for a long time without responding, until the fearful and panicked screams also sounded from the mountain, "Help! Snake! Poisonous snake, ah!" As if he had just woken up from a dream, he threw away the book in his hand and ran out of the pavilion in a panic. Susu! Susu! Countless snakes seemed to follow them like shadows. Seventh sister! Seventh sister, wait for me! Chu Yuling saw Chu Qinghuang walking leisurely in the mountains, a look of viciousness flashed in her eyes, and she shouted in fear, "Seventh sister, help me!" As she said that, she ran madly to Chu Qinghuang's side and stretched out her hands to grab Chu Qinghuang. Her Royal Highness the princess ducked slightly to avoid her touch. Chu Yuling's face was completely pale. She stared at the extremely fast snakes with caution. Soon she found that the snakes were swarming towards her with their tongues spitting out. Even though Chu Qinghuang was standing beside her, the snakes seemed to be blind and could not see anything. They only aimed at Chu Yuling. The sixth princess was so scared that she had no idea what was going on. These snakes were obviously coming for Chu Qinghuang, but why did they all chase her in the end, and Chu Qinghuang was not hurt at all? Chu Qinghuang seemed not to see the countless poisonous snakes besieging her. She looked at Chu Yuling with a mocking look, "Did you miscalculate again?" Chu Yuling looked at her in horror. "Today's little lesson, I hope you remember it more deeply." Chu Qinghuang's mouth twitched slightly, raised her hand and snapped her fingers, "Have fun." Swish. The snakes were moving faster and were about to crawl to Chu Yuling's feet. Chu Yuling turned pale with fear and sprinted down the mountain, "Help! Help! Ah!" A figure flashed down the mountain, and Fukang rushed past like a gust of wind. When he saw the intact Chu Qinghuang walking towards him leisurely, he suddenly stopped. The uneasiness in his eyes slowly faded away. He turned around and looked at the group of snakes chasing Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi as if they were collecting debts, and fell into a strange silence. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 74. The nobles and ladies by the stream had finally waited for Chu Qinghuang to leave, and they were determined to perform well at the poetry meeting. However, the wine cup had only traveled 2 rounds along the stream. Ling Jing wrote a poem, which won the applause of the whole audience, and just wiped away the bad mood that was just affected by Chu Qinghuang. The second cup of wine happened to stop in front of Wen Zhan. The second young master Wen drank the wine and was about to write a poem when a shrill scream rang out in the mountains. Everyone was startled and stood up at the same time to look in the direction of the mountains. "Ah! Help! Help! Snake! Ah! Someone come!" The terrified cry for help showed signs of getting more and more intense, and each one was more shrill than the last, and everyone looked at it anxiously. It seems to be the voice of the sixth princess. It is indeed the sixth princess. What happened to her? Was she offending the princess again? It shouldn't be this time. When Jean frowned, "I seem to hear the sixth princess shouting that there is a snake." Snake. Everyone was startled, and then looked at each other anxiously. They knew that there were many insects and snakes in the mountains, but they did not go deep into the outer edge of the dense forest, so they should not provoke snakes. They had held many Kushuiliu's hang poetry gatherings here in previous years, and they had never encountered the situation of being besieged by snakes. What happened this time? Who among you knows martial arts? Oh no. The seventh princess is also on the mountain. When Jean's face changed slightly, and he raised his foot and went towards the mountain. The sixth princess screamed so miserably, but the seventh princess did not move. Is she in danger? His expression was so real that others were also affected, and they couldn't help but think of this possibility. Her Royal Highness the Princess is the most beloved daughter of the Emperor. If she has an accident, I'm afraid that everyone present today will not be able to escape responsibility. As soon as these words came out, the others changed their expressions. Regardless of whether they hated the eldest princess or were afraid of her, they could not deny that Chu Qinghuang was indeed the emperor's favorite daughter. As legitimate sons and daughters of aristocratic families, they were clearly aware that if the eldest princess had an accident, the emperor would be furious and they would be lucky to survive. At the very least, their father would lose his position and title, and at the worst, he would be thrown into prison and executed. Thinking of this, the young masters ran towards the mountains, and in a hurry they even forgot to call for the guards to save them. However, as soon as they ran to the mountain path, they saw the staggering sixth princess running towards them with a pale face. The sixth princess, who had always been elegant and dignified, had messed up her hair, her face was pale and bloodless, and her gorgeous and beautiful dress was stained with mud and grass due to the fall. She looked really out of shape and extremely embarrassed. Feng Jinzi behind her was not much better. His face was pale and stiff, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. He could not hide the fear in his eyes. He stumbled several times and almost fell. He looked as embarrassed as he could be. Everyone watched in silence. Help! Chu Yuling looked up and saw the people in front of her. Her eyes went dark and she staggered and fell over. She was still shouting, "Help, there are snakes, many snakes." Sixth princess, a maid rushed forward in 2 steps and supported Chu Yuling in time. Sixth princess. Everyone looked up the mountain and saw no snakes. They only saw Chu Qinghuang walking slowly with a calm and indifferent look. She had a slender figure and cold and distant eyebrows. The face of the girl, who was so beautiful that she could be called a city, was frosty, which made people afraid. "Your Highness," the Princess Wenzhan walked over worriedly and looked Chu Qinghuang up and down, "are you okay?" The sixth princess said, "There was a snake, I was so worried." "Where did the snake come from?" Chu Qinghuang frowned and looked at the fainted Chu Yuling impatiently. "She has hysteria." Huh. Everyone's expression froze slightly, and they turned their heads unconsciously to look at Chu Yuling, who fell in the arms of the maid. After a moment, they turned their heads to look at Feng Jinzi, who was also in a mess, with an inexplicable strange expression. What happened? Was there a snake or not? The sixth princess had hysteria, and Feng Jinzi also had hysteria. While everyone was silent, a panicked shout rang out in the mountains, "Help! Help! There are snakes! Run! The snakes are chasing us!" Everyone looked up and saw several royal nobles with messy hair and pale faces running down in a panic. They all looked terrified and stumbled all the way, as if they had seen a ghost. Everyone subconsciously looked at Chu Qinghuang again. Her Royal Highness the Princess was still indifferent, distant, calm and composed, as if she would not change her face even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. Everyone's expressions became more and more strange. So except for the princess, everyone else who went up the mountain had hysteria. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 75. Whether the others have hysteria or not, no one knows, but Chu Qinghuang certainly doesn't. Fu Kang Chu King Huang's voice was indifferent, revealing a bit of coldness and ruthlessness. Remember the names of these people, and check whose sons they are later. I will settle accounts with them when I have time. Yes. Chu Qing Huang said, her eyes swept across the faces of the people present. Everyone continue to play, I won't disturb your good mood. After saying this, Chu Qing Huang turned and walked towards the carriage. Fu Kang followed. Wen Zhan nodded to everyone and said goodbye, and also left with Chu Qing Huang. Everyone had different expressions, silently watching Chu Qing Huang's back as she left. Some were frightened, some were thoughtful, and some were anxious. However, there was no doubt that everyone had completely lost the interest in playing at this moment. Continue playing? Who is still in the mood to continue playing? The faces of the several royal nobles named by Chu Qing Huang were already pale, and the shock of being chased by the snakes had not yet faded. When they heard Chu Qing Huang's words, their eyes went dark in an instant, and they wished they could faint on the spot. Mr. Feng, what happened just now? Someone looked at Feng Jinzi in confusion, and couldn't help asking the question in his heart, are there really snakes on the mountain? Feng Jinzi's face was extremely ugly, pale, and frightened. He glanced at the person who asked the question woodenly, said nothing, and quickly turned and left. It was just that his lower body was exhausted, his legs were weak, and his body seemed to float on cotton wool when he walked. The whole person was in a trance, as if he was very frightened. The carriage of the princess's mansion started moving quickly and slowly left everyone's sight. Your Highness, what happened on the mountain? Wen Zhan frowned, is someone doing something weird? Chu Qing Huang leaned on the couch in the car, flipping through a military book. Yeah. Wen Zhan was curious and asked, is there really a snake? The frightened look of Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi just now did not seem to be a disguise. Chu Yuling kept shouting that there was a snake. Although Feng Jinzi did not shout, his expression was exactly the same as Chu Yuling's. The few people who came down the mountain later were even more panicked and frightened, and they also screamed that there was a snake chasing them, so it was unlikely to be a lie. It was just a clumsy trick used by Feng Jinzi and Chu Yuling. Although Chu Qing Huang's tone was light, her eyes were cold. They deliberately led me up the mountain and saw Feng Jinzi being humiliated in the pavilion, hoping to rekindle my old feelings for Feng Jinzi. Wen Zhan paused, then nodded slowly, it was indeed quite clumsy. Seeing that I was not fooled, those people led a group of snakes on the mountain and wanted to use poisonous snakes to deal with me. Chu Qing Huang's voice was cold, I let them taste the feeling of being chased by a group of snakes. She was extremely merciful by not taking their lives directly. Attracted the snakes, Wen Zhan frowned, what method did they use? Aren't they worried about backlash? Chu Qing Huang thought of Chu Yuling screaming and fleeing just now, and was in a good mood. She didn't mind satisfying Wen Zhan's curiosity. Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi both wore sachets with special smells. They thought they could avoid the attack of the snakes, but they didn't expect that they would suffer the consequences in the end. Wen Zhan was silent for a moment, this plan is really vicious. There are many kinds of snakes in the mountains. There must be highly poisonous snakes among the snakes attracted. Once they are bitten, it may be fatal immediately. Chu Yuling wanted to kill Chu Qing Huang. And even if Chu Qing Huang was really bitten by a poisonous snake, no one could prove that it was done by the sixth princess. At most, it was said to be an accident. After all, everyone knows that there are snakes in the mountains, and being bitten by a poisonous snake is not a rare thing. The sixth princess's plan is profound, which can be seen. Vicious, Chu Qing Huang sneered, no one can be safe after plotting against me. Chu Yuling will soon taste the consequences of her own trap. Fu Kang, who was sitting outside the car, drove silently. Hearing the conversation between Chu Qing Huang and Wen Zhan, his mind was filled with the scene of Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi being chased by snakes. When they reached the foot of the mountain, Chu Qing Huang flicked her fingers and said, "Go and play by yourself." Those snakes seemed to have spirituality, as if they had received special instructions. They hid in the bushes and disappeared in front of them at the fastest speed. Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi, who were chased and out of control, did not see this scene, but Fu Kang, who was walking beside Chu Qinghuang, saw it clearly. So when the people at the foot of the mountain heard Chu Yuling screaming for help and rushed over, the snakes had already disappeared without a trace, and not a single snake was seen. Wen Zhan sighed. Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi originally just regarded the princess as a fool who could be used. Later, when things were beyond their control, they turned into calculations and hostility. Until now, it has completely turned into murderous intent. It seems that no matter where she goes in the future, Her Royal Highness the Princess must always pay attention to her personal safety. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 76. The carriage arrived outside the gate of the eldest princess's mansion. After getting off the carriage, Chu Qinghuang met a person, a young man of 17 or 18 years old who was as gentle as water. Your Highness, the eldest princess. The young man was dressed in white, like a orchid and jade tree, and his etiquette was respectful and upright. I met the eldest princess in Chuling Chuan. The housekeeper and the guard commander Lu Jun were standing outside the door. Obviously, the appearance of this strange young man was something they should be wary of, but for some unknown reason, they did not take the initiative to drive this young man away. Instead, they acquiesced in allowing him to stay here and wait for the return of the eldest princess. Chu Qinghuang looked at him silently. The boy had fair skin, a slender figure, and a beautiful and elegant face. His handsome eyebrows and eye contours had a familiar feeling. He looked clean and indifferent, which brought back memories of her. Chuling Chuan. Yes. Chuling Chuan who knows medical skills. Yes. Chuling Chuan who is good at business. The boy still answered, yes. 3 yeses in a row made Chu Qinghuang's expression become visibly kinder. The corner of her mouth curled up and she said, follow me to the palace. Yes. Fu Kang, who was following Chu Qinghuang, pursed his thin lips. From the moment he saw this young man, his expression was a little wary. For some reason, even though there were 4 servants in Chu Qinghuang's backyard, those 4 kept saying that they wanted to. He competes for favor, but he has no hostility or sense of crisis. The appearance of this young man made all his nerves tense. It's just that he has always been good at controlling his emotions. At this time, he narrowed his eyes slightly to hide the hostility in his eyes, and silently followed Chu Qinghuang all the way to Dongshang Pavilion. The young man followed Chu Qinghuang to the study. Fu Kang walked to the door and stopped in silence. When Chu Qinghuang reached out to close the door, she saw that he was standing still and said calmly, come in. Fu Kang pursed his lips, said yes respectfully, and then followed him into the study. Your Majesty Chuling Chuan, please see the little princess. Chuling Chuan lifted up his robe and knelt down, solemnly performing a salute. Your Royal Highness, the princess is 1,000 years old. Fu Kang frowned slightly. Little princess? Get up. Chu Qinghuang walked to the chair behind the desk and sat down. You came very quickly. Chuling Chuan said, I hurried over after receiving His Highness's letter. I didn't dare to delay His Highness's important business. Where did you receive the message? The young man was silent for a moment and said, Northern Xinjiang. Northern Xinjiang. Chu Qinghuang frowned. Did you come all the way from northern Xinjiang? Yes. Chu Ling Chuan lowered his eyebrows. There is a larger business in northern Xinjiang. My father ordered his subordinates to handle it personally. He has been staying in northern Xinjiang for more than a month. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment. Thank you for your hard work. I don't dare to express my sorrow. Chu Lingchuan's words and deeds were all respectful. It is the duty of subordinates to obey the princess's instructions. Chu Qinghuang said, my shadow guard has some health problems, and I want you to come over and take a look at him. Shadow guard? A rare look of astonishment appeared on Chu Lingchuan's handsome and elegant face. He subconsciously glanced at Fukang, who was standing beside Chu Qinghuang. A strange color flashed across his eyes, and then he lowered his eyebrows. Yes. He walked to Fukang's side and said calmly, please extend your wrist. Fukang remained silent and did not move. Fukang. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, let him take your pulse. Fukang pursed his lips, stretched out his wrist without saying a word, and let the young man pinch his life gate. Time passed little by little. Chu Qinghuang didn't bother him, just picked up a few books on the desk and looked through them, wondering whose house should be raided next. Chu Lingchuan hesitated. His name is Fukang, my shadow guard. Fukang's body doesn't seem to have any major problems. Chu Lingchuan let go of his wrist and replied truthfully, it's just that my spleen and stomach are a little bit bad. I'll just take some time to nurse myself back to health. My body has been a bit overdrawn in the past, and I've been resting well recently. It's okay. Chu Qinghuang frowned and said calmly, Fukang, please go out for a while. Fukang pursed his lips, said yes, and walked out without saying a word. The door was closed. Chu Qinghuang frowned slightly. Is there really no problem in other aspects? My subordinates didn't notice anything unusual. Every time he falls asleep alone at night, he trembles from the cold. Chu Qinghuang thought for a moment and told the truth, not when he sleeps with me in his arms. Is it possible that this situation is due to poisoning? Chu Lingchuan was slightly stunned. Sleep with His Highness in your arms. He just thought that the relationship between the Shadow Guard and His Highness was a bit unusual, but he didn't expect that it was really unusual. However, a Shadow Guard, Her Royal Highness has such a distinguished status, how could she be so close to a Shadow Guard? Chu Qinghuang nodded. It's not that he was overstepping the rules, it was because I saw that he was very cold at night, so I took the initiative to let him sleep on the bed, and then somehow. The development of the situation was somewhat beyond her expectation. Chu Lingchuan was silent for a long time. What he was thinking about was if the men in Dongling knew that the little princess had been taken advantage of by a shadow guard, how would the shadow guard die? Chu Qinghuang looked at him silently. Chu Lingchuan came back to his senses temporarily, thought of Chu Qinghuang's question just now, and slowly shook his head. There is no poisoning. If what His Highness said is true and he was not deliberately pretending, then it is most likely that someone has used the soul-obsessing spell. Spirituality. My subordinates wrote to ask King Yu. Chu Lingchuan said, he may be aware of this situation. King Yu is good at predicting divination and is proficient in fortune-telling. He must be able to see the problem with Fukang. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 77. Chu Qinghuang hummed, this matter is not urgent. Did you come here alone? No, I brought a few guards with me and settled them in the inn. When do you plan to leave? My subordinate won't be leaving for the time being. Chu Lingchuan smiled and said, I just want to stay here with Ziki to check the accounts. If your highness needs anything, I will be here at your call. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and looked at him. Brother Huang, have you received the news? Don't worry, your highness. Your majesty and the king of war have learned of his highness's whereabouts. However, Dongling and Ziki are far away, and it may take some time to get here. Chu Qinghuang frowned. Who asked them to come here? Both masters are worried about His Highness, and they came here in a hurry to confirm that His Highness is safe. Chu Chuan said, but your Majesty cannot leave for the time being, and the one who comes first may be His Highness the War King. Chu Huang was silent. Although she had not been reborn in the original owner for a long time, her soul had been wandering for a while before her rebirth, so something had actually happened to her in Dongling for some time. Besides, the Emperor brother knew about her catastrophe at the age of 18, so no wonder they were worried. You can send me a letter and let the second Emperor brother prepare well before coming over. Just arrive in Ziki before July. July, Chu Chuan was puzzled. What are your plans, Your Highness? I made a promise in front of Emperor Ziki. Within 3 months, envoys will come to Dongling to reduce or exempt Ziki's tribute this year. Chu Huang said, let the second emperor come to inform this matter in person. I think it's more intimidating. Chu Chuan was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly, Your Highness is absolutely right. The King of War is in charge of the 3 armies. If he personally brings people here, the Emperor of Ziki will be so frightened that he will not be able to sleep. Dongling soldiers and horses are powerful. The continuous cavalry training day and night is unmatched by other countries. The war horses and weapons are all sophisticated. The War King is the second most noble figure in Dongling after His Majesty the Emperor. He holds the power of Dongling's 400,000 soldiers and horses. When Emperor Ziki learned that he had arrived in person, he couldn't sleep and had to lead all his officials out of the city to greet him in person to show his sincerity. As for why His Highness wants to reduce the tribute from 11 chi, there is no need to ask. Anyway, Dongling is rich and does not care about this drizzle. Your Highness can just have fun. How are your father and mother now? Everything is fine. Chu Chuan nodded, Your Highness, don't worry. Prince Yu is here, and the regent has already known that Your Highness is fine, so it didn't cause too much panic. Chu Huang hummed, feeling a little at ease. You stay in the princess mansion for the time being, and tell the outside world that I have accepted another servant. Chu Huang said, I will go to the palace later. You go to meet the people in the backyard first and see if there are any. If you don't know me, I'll start helping Kang get well tonight. Chu Chuan's expression was subtle, serving you. It's not mine. Chu Huang glanced at him, this princess used to be a nymphomaniac who loved men. Chu Chuan snorted, actually, it doesn't matter even if the princess likes it. Chu Huang was silent. When Her Majesty the Queen was on the throne, she was unable to build 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. Her Highness the Princess can make up for this regret. Chu Huang said calmly, presumptuous. This subordinate is a bitch-tongued. Chu Chuan bowed his head and admitted his mistake. His respectful and humble attitude was particularly upright. Your Highness, I forgive you. Chu Huang was not interested in punishing him, but just asked a few more questions, and Chu Chuan answered them one by one. Finally, Chu Huang said, do you know Zongjin? Kongjin. Chu Chuan thought for a moment, then shook his head, I've never heard of it. A little-known person, not worthy of his acquaintance. Chu Huang didn't ask any more questions. You go and deal with your own affairs first, and then come and stay at the princess mansion tomorrow. Yes. Chu Chuan respectfully agreed, then bowed and left. When he turned around and opened the door and walked out, he unexpectedly met the shadow guard's cold eyes with hostility hidden in them. Chu Chuan was startled, and then said calmly, if I knew that you had ulterior motives for staying with His Highness, you would know what it means to be unable to die. After saying this, he walked away without waiting for Fu Kang to respond. Fu Kang stared at his back expressionlessly, eyes filled with color, until his master's call sounded in his ears. He lowered his eyes and walked into the study. Chaos in the palace. The 6th princess suffered from hysteria. After being rushed back to the palace, she began to fall into a coma. Her face was pale and she kept murmuring, ah! There's a snake. Help, ah! Don't come here. Don't chase me. Get away. Help, help. The imperial doctor was summoned to the princess palace urgently. After several diagnoses and treatments, he was unable to wake up the sixth princess. Chu Yuling lay on the bed, rolling over in fear, frantically reaching out to beat the air, but always closing her eyes tightly. His face was extremely pale. Concubine Feng was so anxious that she couldn't help shouting, "What's going on? Aren't you very skilled in medicine? You can't even treat such a small symptom. What use do you have?" Reporting to the imperial concubine, the sixth princess is extremely frightened. "I'm afraid she needs special methods to calm her down." "What special method?" "This, I have decided for the time being. I can only drink some decoction and try it first. Then hurry up and get the medicine." "Yes." Concubine Feng's face was frighteningly cold. She coldly asked the maids who followed Chu Yuling. After learning that what happened with Chu Qinghuang, she went to Yuqian Palace to see the emperor without stopping. "Your Majesty," Concubine Feng threw herself in front of the emperor and cried bitterly, "Please, Your Majesty, help me and Yiling." The emperor frowned. "Concubine, please stand up and tell me slowly, what happened?" Concubine Feng wiped her tears. "Today, a Kushui Liu's hang poetry gathering was held in the suburbs. Yiling and Qinghuang both attended. I don't know if Qinghuang's recent behavior is frightening, or because she is not in harmony with the young masters and ladies, so there are constant conflicts in the suburbs today. In order to ease the atmosphere, Yiling took the initiative to invite us to walk on the mountain path. Unexpectedly, this walk was actually attacked. Now. Eyes were red, and Concubine Feng was so anxious that tears fell down. She is so frightened that she is lying on the bed, fainting and talking incoherently. I am so anxious that I don't know what to do. Please help me, Your Majesty." After hearing what she said, the emperor frowned frequently. "You mean, Qinghuang is the cause of Yuling's condition?" Feng Gaifei's face turned pale. "Qinghuang went up the mountain with Yuling. After coming down the mountain, Qinghuang was intact, but Yuling was frightened. I have to worry." "It shouldn't be possible," the emperor said calmly. "Qinghuang is not someone who would bully her sister. Calm down first, and I will summon Qinghuang to ask clearly." Feng Gaifei was shocked and looked at him in disbelief. What does the emperor mean by this? What does Chu Qinghuang mean that she is not someone who would bully her sister? Does the emperor think that his daughter Chu Qinghuang is a bodhisattva who saves all living beings? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 78. Of course Chu Qinghuang is not a bodhisattva who saves all sentient beings. However, the emperor thought that he knew this daughter quite well. Although Qinghuang had a bad temper, it was probably due to her natural strength. Her behavior had always been biased towards men. Even if she bullied others, she would not bully weak girls. Home unless the other party actively seeks death. Therefore, he only had a dubious attitude towards Concubine Feng's words. The emperor ordered someone to summon Chu Qinghuang to enter the palace, and then said to Concubine Feng, "Have you arranged for the imperial doctor to see Yiling?" Concubine Feng wiped the corners of her eyes, her expression anxious, and her words choked with sobs. "I've already seen it, but the imperial doctor said it's not too optimistic. A beauty crying can still win some pity, but Concubine Feng is already over 40, and no matter how well maintained she is no longer a teenage girl." The emperor's tone was calm. "Don't be anxious for now. I will call the imperial doctor over later to inquire carefully. If you are too frightened, you only need to rest for a few days, and there should be no serious problems." Concubine Feng's expression was slightly stiff. Her daughter was lying on the bed in constant fright, but the emperor said so lightly that it was nothing serious. How biased is he? Chu Qinghuang is his daughter, Isn't Yi Ling his daughter? Emperor. Kneel down. Concubine Feng squeezed the handkerchief tightly, suppressed the anger in her heart, and bowed her knees to leave. The emperor sat in front of the dragon case and said calmly, Chen Hai, tell me, what is going on? Chen Hai, the personal eunuch, bowed and said, I don't dare to discuss the princess matters. You are forgiven. Yes, Chen Hai lowered his head and spoke respectfully and cautiously, in my opinion, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess has always been a straightforward person. If you want to bully the sixth princess, there is no need to go all the way to the mountain. The emperor hummed. I heard something before, Chen Hai said. A few days ago, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess left the palace and encountered the sixth princess blocking her car on the road. Her Royal Highness the eldest princess was probably in a bad mood and did not want to pay attention to the sixth princess. Unexpectedly, the sixth princess she actually knelt down to the eldest princess in the street. Many people saw this scene. Some people criticized the eldest princess on the spot for not knowing her age and actually asking her sister to kneel down. The emperor frowned. How dignified is it for a majestic princess to kneel down in the street? Chen Haidao, the next day, Ding Yushi made an impeachment statement, saying that Her Royal Highness the Princess was ignorant, arrogant, and domineering. Your Majesty should still remember that statement. Of course I remember, His Majesty. The Emperor nodded, with an angry expression. Ding Yushi is also full. There are so many corrupt officials in the court, and I haven't seen him impeach a few. He keeps an eye on Qing Huang every day. I am really too indulgent of him. Before nearly 800,000 taels of silver were confiscated from Hong Shangshu's mansion, Ding Yushang had never seen a report to impeach Hong Qingjai for corruption. On the contrary, Qing Huang, a princess who was doing business, was impeached by these blind censors every day. He saw that these censors no longer wanted to do it. His Majesty the Emperor was silent for a while. You just said that Qing Huang was not in a good mood that day when he left the palace. Why? I have also heard a little bit about it. Chen Hai lowered his voice. Concubine Duan intended to betroth the eldest princess to the legitimate son of the second wife of the Ling family. It happened that the eldest princess met Mr. Ling on her way out of the palace that day. The emperor thought for a moment and nodded slowly. I know this. Concubine Duan mentioned it that day. The legitimate son of the Ling family seems to have regarded himself as the eldest princess's consort. He asked Her Royal Highness the eldest princess to dismiss the servants in the backyard, saying that it was against the 3 obedience and 4 virtues of her daughter's family. Her eldest princess seemed a little unhappy, so she punished him by kneeling for half a day. Our dismissal of the backyard. The emperor's face darkened. I didn't interfere with King Huang's backyard. Who does he think he is? He didn't even say a word, but he actually dared to point fingers at King Huang's behavior. Chen Hai lowered his head. Your Majesty, please calm down. Mr. Ling is Concubine Duan's nephew after all. The emperor's tone was cold. The Ling family has probably lost their identity in recent years. Because Concubine Duan is so favored, even the princess dares to ignore her. Am I indulging them too much? Your Majesty, please calm down. Chen Hai lowered his eyebrows and lowered his eyes, handing a cup of tea. Her Royal Highness the eldest princess will not buy into anyone's fault. No matter what the Ling family masters rely on, it is impossible for them to have the slightest influence on Her Royal Highness the eldest princess. When the emperor heard this, he was silent for a moment. I will not let Qing Huang marry Ling Jing, he won't even think about it. Your Majesty, the eldest princess doesn't seem to have any intention of getting married to the Ling family. The emperor sighed and frowned tightly. Concubine Duan is also confused. She knows that I don't like my concubine to use his daughter's marriage as a bargaining chip, but she still knowingly does it. I don't know if she wants to test my bottom line. Chen Hai was startled and said quickly, Your Majesty must be overly preoccupied. Concubine Duan should not have such thoughts. Whether she has this idea, she knows it in her heart. The emperor rubbed his eyebrows. but the Ling family has been in charge of the military for a long enough time. Chen Hai's heart skipped a beat and he lowered his eyebrows in silence, not daring to speak any more. The emperor's thoughts should not be speculated without authorization. Even if His Majesty really wanted to beat the Ling family, he could not intervene at will. Moreover, the Duan concubine clan is gaining power right now. Whether the emperor wants to simply beat him or has something else on his mind, no one dares to guess. Your Majesty, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess has arrived. The emperor looked up in surprise. It came very quickly. Let Qing Huang come in quickly. Yes. $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 79. Chu Qing Huang stepped into Yuqian Palace, bowed slightly and saluted, "Father." Qing Huang the emperor suppressed his emotions and spoke gently, "Something happened in the mountains in the suburbs of Yuling. I heard that they were talking non-stop at this time. Concubine Feng just said that she went to the mountains with you. I want to ask you what's going on." Chu Qing Huang looked indifferent. "Father, you should call Feng Jinzi and the noble disciples of the royal family over to ask." As soon as the emperor heard her tone, he knew that there was something hidden, and his tone was low. "Feng Jinzi and the noble disciples." "Yes," Chu Qing Huang said indifferently. "Chu Yuling took the initiative to invite me to go for a walk in the mountains, and asked Feng Jinzi and those noble disciples to act out a play, which happened to let me hear their love for Feng Jinzi." Jinji was sarcastic, thinking that my old love for Feng Jin would rekindle because of this, so I just thought it was a joke and naturally I wouldn't be fooled. The emperor frowned. "It is indeed a joke. Feng Jin was sent home in the capital, but he still didn't give up. When you used to be sarcastic and disdainful of Qing Huang, why didn't you see so many of his tricks? I originally thought they were just putting on a show, but I didn't expect the real evil ones behind them." Chu Qing Huang's tone was full of disgust. Chu Yuling and Feng Jinzi both wore incense that can repel snakes and insects when they went up the mountain today. "Nang, I don't know what those noble disciples did after they went up the mountain." Not long after, several venomous snakes appeared in the pavilion. Speaking of this, her eyes became colder and disgusted. "Originally, Chu Yuling wanted me to be bitten to death by a poisonous snake, but in the end, I don't know whether her snake-repelling sachet lost its effectiveness, or she used the wrong incense that can attract snakes and insects. Those snakes chased the two of them, but turned a blind eye to me. I was confused at first sight, but after I realized what I was doing, I followed them and killed a few snakes. In order to worry about causing panic, I just let them go." The shadow guard threw the snake's body into the forest. The more the emperor listened, the darker his face became. When he heard the last word, a layer of frost formed between his brows and eyes. "Is there such a thing? How audacious! Attract poisonous snakes to attack Qing Huang? Who came up with such a vicious idea?" "Father, there is no need to be angry," Chu Qing Huang said calmly. "It is not easy for Chu Yuling to hurt me. Now that she is frightened, it is her own fault. After learning this lesson, she will probably not dare to do anything random again next time." The emperor remained calm and silent. Seeing that he didn't speak, Chu Qing Huang stopped speaking. She just stood quietly, her expression visibly cold and bored, as if she had not fully vented the grievances she suffered in the suburbs. Chen Hai the emperor said coldly, "According to my decree, Feng Gaifei's goddaughter Wu Fang will be demoted to Zheyi with immediate effect, and her mother and daughter will move out of Yangfu Palace and move to Qingyan Palace. After a pause, he added angrily, without the edict, they are not allowed to step out of the Qingyan Hall again. They are not allowed to pay greetings to the Queen Mother. Chen Hai received the order in fear. I will do it now. The emperor took a deep breath. Qing Huang wouldn't lie, he knew it. Besides, he could find out the truth about Feng Jinzi and Chu Yuling wearing sachets by sending someone to investigate, and Qing Huang would not tell such a clumsy lie. Thinking of what Chen Hai said just now, Chu Yuling could abandon the dignity of a royal princess and kneel down in front of Qing Huang in the street, just to let others see King Huang's arrogance and domineeringness. What does it mean to wear a sachet to attract poisonous snakes? He just didn't expect that this seemingly gentle daughter could be so vicious, and her vicious moves would kill Qing Huang. Is she aggrieved for Feng Jinzi, or does she want to seek justice for Chu Tianyan? Chu Tianyan was demoted to the county king because he made his own mistake and had nothing to do with Qing Huang. She felt dissatisfied. Was she dissatisfied with his father's treatment? And when Wen Xingyun passed his birthday, Qing Huang was also assassinated, and Chu Yuling and Chu Tianyan were not among them. The more the emperor thought about it, the more he could not control his anger, and a low pressure enveloped Yuqian Palace. Father, you can order someone to bring Feng Jinzi and those noble disciples into the palace for questioning, and find out who gave them the sachets on their bodies, Chu Qing Huang said calmly. We'll check later. It won't be too late for Princess Feng to find out the truth. The emperor said coldly, Feng Gaifei has no way of raising her son, and her goddaughter is not good either. She is no longer worthy of the position of imperial concubine. I didn't just throw her into the cold palace, I already treated her a little too easy. Chu Qing Huang was silent. You go back and rest first. The emperor suppressed his temper. I will give you an explanation for this matter. Chu Qing Huang nodded. My son, please leave. After saying that, he turned around and left without any intention of staying any longer. After she left, the emperor sent the imperial army to summon Feng Jinzi and the few noble disciples who went to the mountain together today. As he waited, he became more and more angry as he thought about it. Then he realized that since Chu Qing Huang raided the Hong family, this daughter became the favorite and a thorn in the side of the harem concubines and the princes. If you can win them over, it will be a sweet potato. If you can't win them over, you will be a thorn in your side that you can quickly remove. Even concubine Duan, the biological mother, is plotting against her daughter. This shows how dangerous King Huang's situation is now. This is just a copy of the Shangshu mansion. Today I went to the countryside to participate in the Ku Shui Shui Shang poetry party and was almost bitten by a poisonous snake. Who knows how many overt and covert attacks there will be in the future. The emperor's expression was dark and angry. Here comes someone. Emperor. The three leaders of Chuanan Pavilion. Yes. The guards took the order and left. After walking out of the palace gate, Chu Qing Huang got on the carriage. Fu Kang, she said lightly, go to the dark chamber and tell them what happened on the mountain today. Yes. Chu Qing Huang sat alone on the soft couch in the carriage, looking at her palm with her eyes closed. Her cold and picturesque eyebrows were frosty. She had said long ago that those who dared to plot against her must be prepared to bear the consequences. Chu Tianyan was demoted to the title of a prince, and concubine Feng was demoted to Zaiyi. From then on, the mother and son had no relationship with the crown prince, and the status of Princess Chu Yuling would become insignificant as concubine Feng's position was lowered. She wanted to see how long Chu Yuling's gentle image like a white lotus could last, and where her sinister calculations could be used. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 80. The imperial edict was soon passed to Yangfu Palace, and concubine Feng was demoted to Zaiyi. When Chen Hai led people to convey the edict, concubine Feng stared at the palace servant in front of her in disbelief, and vaguely thought that she had heard it wrong. What did you say? She turned pale and stared at Chen Hai in shock. Why is this? Tell me, why is this? Chen Hai lowered his eyebrows and eyes, his tone was submissive but tough. This is the Emperor's intention. I am just following orders. Please ask the Zheyi to move out of Yongfu Palace with the 6th princess as soon as possible and move to Qingyan Hall to live. I won't go, concubine Feng gritted her teeth and said angrily, her tone was a little sharp because of excitement, I didn't do anything wrong, why did the Emperor demote me? Did Chu Qinghuang, that little bitch, hurt me? Chen Hai, did she hurt me? No, she can't go. She is the first concubine of the 4 concubines. She is the most honorable in the harem except the queen. Why does the Emperor demote her? After being demoted to Zheyi, Tianyan will no longer be eligible to compete for the crown prince. She can't go, she will never go. I want to see the Emperor. Chen Hai, I want to see the Emperor. Did you hear me? I want to see the Emperor. Chen Hai closed the imperial edict and raised his hand to signal the palace servants who followed him, take the Zheyi and the 6th princess to the Qingyan palace. You servants must take good care of the Zheyi and the 6th princess. No mistakes are allowed. Do you hear me? Yongfu Palace knelt in fear, yes. Qingyan Palace needs quiet, and the 6th princess needs rest, Chen Hai explained carefully. Try not to let irrelevant people disturb the quietness of the Zheyi and the 6th princess. If an unexpected situation occurs, you will not have enough heads to chop off, understand? This means that concubine Feng and her son will be semi-confined in the Qingyan palace. Yes. I understand. Chen Hai bowed to concubine Feng, oh no, concubine Feng Zheyi, and said goodbye, I still have to report the Emperor's order. I hope concubine Zheyi will cooperate with me and don't anger the Emperor again. After saying that, he turned around and left, ignoring the screams of concubine Feng behind him. The wind direction in the palace is changing at any time. Although the Emperor's heart is unpredictable, whose mind is really unpredictable? Only by accurately guessing the Emperor's thoughts can you live long in the palace full of intrigues. Whether it is the Empress Dowager or the Queen, all the concubines in the harem, no one can understand the Emperor's mind better than the eunuchs serving the Emperor. The treasury is empty now, the country is in a weak state, and it is facing the fate of being conquered and annexed by the iron cavalry of other countries at any time. The Emperor is eager to fill the treasury and strengthen the army, but none of the princes under his knees dare to take this job. Only the eldest princess has this courage. Therefore, whoever dares to obstruct the eldest princess from doing things is against the Emperor, and whoever dares to secretly attack the eldest princess is testing the Emperor's bottom line and is unforgivable. Chen Hai knew in his heart that the Emperor cared not only about the safety of his daughter, but also the hope that Chu Qinghuang brought him. He was eager to make Ziki strong in his hands. Even if there was only a little hope, he would never give up. Therefore, the Emperor did not mind to tolerate all the unusual tempers and temperaments of the eldest princess, and could tolerate all her deviant behaviors infinitely as long as she could achieve what he wanted to do for the Emperor. However, if she couldn't do it? Chen Hai lowered his eyes. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. If the eldest princess finally disappointed the Emperor, I am afraid that falling out of favor would be the most optimistic result. If the princes are smart, they should do their best to assist the eldest princess now, instead of trying to drag their feet, and they should not plot against the eldest princess at this juncture, otherwise they will definitely end up in an extremely miserable end. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.